Overnight, the global picture has been dominated by a sharp escalation in the US-Iran conflict, with signs the war is widening beyond the Middle East. The Financial Times reports a US submarine sank an Iranian warship in the Indian Ocean, off Sri Lanka, after earlier reporting of a strike that killed more than 80 Iranian sailors. Western officials also say the rate of Iranian missile launches is declining, even as Washington's defense secretary says the US is just getting started. The UN is calling for an investigation into a deadly strike on an Iranian girls' school, adding to pressure over civilian harm and the legality and conduct of operations. The conflict is now feeding directly into the technological revolution in defense. Analysis highlights Israel's Iron Beam and the broader shift to directed energy weapons, as militaries look for cheaper ways to intercept large volumes of incoming rockets and drones. The Financial Times also reports Gulf states are racing to secure more U.S. interceptors, as defensive stockpiles are burned through. Separately, Iran's internal future is in focus after the death of Ali Khamenei, with reporting that his son Mujtaba is emerging as a leading candidate for supreme leader, a succession question that could shape the region's next phase. On the global economy, trade tensions are rising again. The BBC reports the U.S. Treasury expects higher tariffs sometime this week, while Spain's Prime Minister has pushed back against a Trump threat to sever trade, framing it as a no-to-war stance. Markets are adjusting. The Financial Times says the Iran war is upending popular trades, with investors reassessing this year's winners amid heightened geopolitical risk. Turning to Australia, the most material development is the start of repatriation flights from the Middle East. The first flight from Dubai to Sydney has landed with around 200 Australians on board, after what returning passengers described as a traumatic waiting period. Foreign Minister Penny Wong says additional crisis response teams have been deployed, while also advising stranded Australians that commercial flights remain the best way out where available. In national politics and policy, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney used a Sydney speech to warn that middle powers like Australia and Canada risk subordination by hegemonic powers, urging stronger sovereignty and coordination. Remarks that land as Australia navigates alliance expectations, trade uncertainty, and regional security shocks. Domestically, the Prime Minister has tabled in Parliament a previously buried Liberal Party review of its 2025 election loss, keeping internal opposition politics and party direction in the spotlight. On the Australian economy, new analysis says growth has picked up to the fastest pace since 2022, supported by both private and government spending, but that managing inflation and interest rates is becoming harder. For the Australian share market, the key near-term driver remains offshore. Any further escalation in the Iran conflict or confirmation of higher U.S. tariffs is likely to shape risk appetite and sector leadership. At the state and local level, Western Australia has released guidelines that could require wind and solar farms to pay host communities, welcomed by shires, but with questions about enforcement and ensuring funds flow. In the Northern Territory, an inquiry into the Acacia Health IT patient record system has heard allegations of more than a $100 million cost blowout, patient safety risks, and a toxic workplace culture, an issue with direct implications for public service procurement, digital delivery, and accountability. In Queensland's far north, rain-battered areas are now under a cyclone warning, with a possible system forecast to cross near Cairns in coming days.